My parents called me the night before my wedding and told me to cancel because family comes first. Turns out they wanted my venue and date for my sister's engagement party. I didn't argue. I just smiled, canceled everything, and disappeared. The next Saturday, when they all showed up at the venue dressed to celebrate, they found out exactly who had booked it instead and why no one could get past security without my approval. I, 29M, never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. This is about my wedding that never happened, my family that I thought I knew, and the moment I realized that being the quiet one doesn't mean being the weak one. My fiancé and I had been planning our wedding for 8 months. Nothing extravagant, but meaningful. We'd found this beautiful historic venue outside the city, booked it a year in advance, and put down a substantial deposit. The place had this gorgeous garden courtyard and a ballroom with original chandeliers from the 1920s. It was perfect. The date was set for a Saturday in October, right when the leaves were at their peak. Growing up, I was always the easy child. My younger sister was the star, the one who got the attention, the one who needed things. I didn't mind, or at least I told myself I didn't. I went to a state school instead of the private university I'd been accepted to because money was tight that year and my sister needed braces and tutoring. I worked through college to avoid burdening anyone. I got my degree, landed a decent job in software development, and built a quiet, stable life. My sister took a different path. She dropped out of college twice, moved back home 3 times, and had a string of failed relationships that always somehow required family intervention and financial support. My parents always justified it by saying she needed more help, that she was still finding herself. I understood. I didn't complain. Then I met my fiancée at a work conference 2 years ago. She was brilliant, kind, and had this way of making everything seem lighter. We dated for a year before I proposed. When I told my family, they seemed happy. My mother cried, my father shook my hand, and my sister hugged me. It felt real. The wedding planning was mostly something my fiancé and I handled ourselves. We didn't ask for money from either family, wanting to do it on our own terms. We invited everyone, sent save-the-dates 6 months in advance, and kept everyone updated. My parents seemed supportive, asking about details, offering suggestions. My sister had just started dating someone new and seemed genuinely excited for us. 3 weeks before the wedding, my sister got engaged. Her boyfriend of 4 months proposed, and suddenly she was planning this huge engagement party. She wanted it to be special, to really announce their relationship to the world. My parents were thrilled, already talking about another wedding to plan. I congratulated her, genuinely happy that she'd found someone. Then came the phone call, the night before my wedding. It was almost 11 when my phone rang. I was at my apartment, my fiancée staying at her parents' place for the traditional night apart. I'd been going over the timeline for the next day, making sure everything was set. My father's voice came through the speaker, serious and heavy. He told me they needed to talk about tomorrow. My mother was on the line too, her voice that particular tone she used when she'd already made a decision and was just informing me of it. They told me I needed to cancel the wedding. Not postpone. Cancel. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process the words. My mother explained that family comes first, that I needed to understand priorities, that sometimes we make sacrifices for the people we love. My father backed her up, saying it was the right thing to do, that I'd understand eventually. I asked them why. My voice came out calmer than I felt. That's when they told me. My sister needed the venue. She'd been planning her engagement party and had fallen in love with a specific place, a place that was already booked for the date she wanted. That place was my wedding venue. She'd apparently driven by it a week ago, seen how beautiful it was, and decided it was perfect. When she called to book it, they told her it was reserved for a wedding. My wedding. My sister had gone to my parents crying about how unfair it was, how she'd finally found her person and wanted to celebrate properly, how she never got the thing she wanted. My parents had tried calling the venue to see if they could book it for a different date for her, but the next available Saturday wasn't for 7 months. My sister didn't want to wait. She wanted that venue, that date, that perfect October Saturday. So my parents had come up with a solution. I could cancel my wedding, they'd take over the venue booking for my sister's engagement party, and I could reschedule for later. My mother explained that an engagement party was more time-sensitive than a wedding, that my fiancé and I could easily get married at a courthouse and have a reception later, that we were being inflexible by not considering family needs. The deposit we'd paid, the vendors we'd booked, the guests traveling from out of state, none of that mattered apparently. My father told me they'd already spoken to my sister about it, and she was so excited. My mother added that this was my chance to finally step up for my sister after she'd struggled so much. I asked them if they were serious. My mother said they'd never been more serious about anything. My father told me to be a man and do the right thing. My sister apparently needed this. I sat in the silence after they finished talking, and something shifted inside me. 29 years of being understanding, of being flexible, of making myself smaller so everyone else could be bigger. 29 years of watching my needs come last. And now this, the night before the most important day of my life. I told them I'd take care of it. My voice was steady, almost pleasant. I said I'd handle everything, and they didn't need to worry. My mother sounded relieved. My father told me he was proud I was being reasonable. They both said goodnight and hung up. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, just breathing. Then I picked up my phone and started making calls. I called the venue first, explained there was an emergency situation and I needed to confirm some security details. The owner knew me well by this point and was concerned. I told her my family might try to claim the venue booking, and under no circumstances should the reservation be transferred or modified. She asked if everything was okay. I told her it would be, and that I needed to add a specific security requirement, a private guest list that required my personal approval for entry. She understood something was very wrong, but didn't push. She confirmed everything would remain exactly as planned, and that she'd personally handle any calls about the booking. Next, I called my fiancée. She answered worried, asking if I was okay given the late hour. I told her about the call from my parents. I told her everything. There was a long silence on her end. Then she asked me what I wanted to do. Not what she wanted, not what was right, but what I wanted. I told her I wanted to get married tomorrow, exactly as planned. She said then that's what we'd do. I made a few more calls that night. To my best friend, who was my best man, to my fiancé's brother, to a few other people I trusted. I explained the situation briefly and told them there might be some drama, but to proceed as planned. Everyone was supportive, several expressing anger on my behalf, but all agreeing to follow through. The next morning, I woke up and got ready for my wedding. I put on my suit, fixed my tie, and headed to the venue. My phone was blowing up with messages from my parents asking for confirmation that I'd canceled, from my sister asking when she could go see the venue for her party. I didn't respond to any of them. The wedding was beautiful. My fiancée looked stunning. My friends were there, her family was there, and everyone who actually cared about us was there. My parents, my sister, and a few of their friends who'd been invited weren't there, obviously. We said our vows in that garden courtyard under the October leaves, and it was perfect. The venue owner had stationed extra security at the entrances, just in case. We had our reception, danced, celebrated, and never once did I think about the people who weren't there. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, surrounded by people who valued me. The calls and messages kept coming throughout the day. First confused, then angry, then panicked. I turned my phone off after the ceremony and didn't turn it back on until we were at the hotel that night. The next week, while my wife and I were on our honeymoon, the real fallout happened. The following Saturday arrived, exactly 1 week after my actual wedding. My parents, my sister, her fiancé, and about 40 of their friends and extended family members all showed up at the venue dressed in their party clothes. My sister had apparently sent out invitations to her engagement party, including the venue address and date. She'd ordered catering through a different company, hired a DJ, and planned this whole elaborate celebration. According to my best friend who heard about it from a mutual connection, they all arrived around 6 in the evening expecting to walk into a decorated venue ready for a party. Instead, they found the venue hosting a charity fundraiser. A fundraiser I'd arranged and paid for the previous week. I'd contacted a local children's hospital foundation that my wife and I had discussed supporting. I'd offered them the venue space for their annual gala, completely free, on that specific Saturday. All they had to do was provide their own guest list, and security would ensure only approved attendees could enter. When my family showed up, security stopped them at the entrance. My sister apparently tried to explain there was a mistake, that this was her venue, her party. The security guard checked the list, confirmed none of their names were on it, and politely turned them away. My father apparently demanded to speak to management. The venue owner came out, recognized him from the wedding photos in my file. and calmly explained that the venue was booked for a private event and they weren't on the guest list. My mother asked about the wedding that was supposed to be canceled. The owner smiled and told her the wedding had gone forward as planned the previous Saturday, and that this weekend's event was also a private booking that had nothing to do with them. My sister reportedly broke down crying on the spot. My parents were furious, demanding to know how I could do this to family. The venue owner, bless her, apparently told them they needed to leave the property or she'd call the police for trespassing. They tried calling me repeatedly. I was on a beach 2,000 miles away with my phone on Do Not Disturb, watching the sunset with my wife. The catering company my sister had booked showed up, realized there was no party, and charged her the full cancellation fee since she hadn't given proper notice. The DJ did the same. The 40 guests who showed up confused and underdressed for what turned out to be a formal charity gala were turned away at the door. Several of them apparently posted on social media asking what happened, and the story started spreading through our extended family and community. When we got back from our honeymoon 2 weeks later, the messages were vicious. My mother left voicemails calling me selfish and cruel. My father sent texts about how I'd betrayed the family. My sister wrote long emails about how I'd humiliated her in front of everyone, how her engagement was ruined, how I'd always been jealous of her. The extended family was split. Some people thought I'd gone too far, that I should have been the bigger person. Others, particularly some of my aunts and uncles who'd apparently watched this dynamic play out for years, reached out privately to say it was about time someone stood up to my parents' favoritism. I didn't respond to my immediate family. Not to the anger, not to the guilt trips, not to the attempts at reconciliation that came later when they realized I was serious about the distance I was creating. My wife asked me several times if I was okay, if I regretted how things went. I told her the truth. I regretted that it came to this, but I didn't regret protecting our wedding. I didn't regret choosing us over people who only saw me as a convenience. Update 1. It's been 3 months since the wedding. I didn't expect to write an update, but things have continued to unfold in ways I didn't anticipate. The charity gala I'd arranged at the venue ended up being a huge success. The Children's Hospital Foundation raised significantly more than their goal, and the event got local media coverage. The venue owner sent me a thank you note saying it was one of the most meaningful events they'd hosted. She also mentioned that several people from the gala asked about the generous anonymous donor who'd provided the space. She'd kept my identity private as I'd requested. My sister's engagement fell apart about 6 weeks after the venue incident. Her fiancé apparently started questioning whether he wanted to marry into a family with this much drama. According to a cousin who's been keeping me loosely informed, the final straw was when my sister wanted him to contribute money towards suing me for emotional distress. He called off the engagement and moved out of state for a job opportunity. My parents blamed me for that too, naturally. More voicemails, more messages about how I destroyed my sister's happiness. I didn't respond to those either. What I didn't expect was the rift it would cause in the extended family. My mother's sister reached out to me directly about a month after everything happened. She apologized for not speaking up sooner about the way my parents treated me versus my sister. She told me stories I'd never heard, about arguments she'd had with my mother over the years about the favoritism, about how she'd watched me fade into the background while my sister demanded center stage. She wasn't the only one. An uncle on my father's side called to tell me he respected what I did, that someone needed to draw a line. A few cousins sent messages of support. It became clear that a lot of people had noticed the dynamic but felt it wasn't their place to interfere. The flip side was the relatives who sided with my parents. A few stopped speaking to me entirely. One aunt uninvited my wife and me from a holiday gathering, saying my presence would upset my parents. I told her I understood and wished her well. My wife and I made our own plans instead. The most surprising development came from my work. I'd kept the drama mostly private, but my boss noticed I seemed lighter, more focused. During a one-on-one meeting, he asked if everything was okay. I gave him a very abbreviated version, just that I'd had to set some boundaries with family. He nodded, said boundaries were important, and then told me about his own experience cutting ties with a toxic sibling. That conversation led to a promotion opportunity. My boss told me he'd been watching my work and thought I was ready for a senior position that had opened up. The role came with significant additional responsibility and a substantial raise. I accepted. When I told my wife, she cried happy tears. We'd been talking about starting a family, and the financial security made that dream feel more tangible. My parents found out about the promotion through the family grapevine. My mother called, the first time she'd tried in weeks. She congratulated me stiffly, then asked if this meant I was ready to move past our disagreement and be a family again. She specifically mentioned that my sister was struggling financially after the breakup and could use some support. I told her I appreciated the call, but I wasn't interested in resuming a relationship where my value was measured by what I could provide. She started to argue. I told her I needed to go and hung up. My wife asked me if I thought they'd ever understand. I told her probably not, but that wasn't my responsibility anymore. We're hosting our own holiday gathering this year. My wife's family, my supportive aunts and uncles, a few close cousins, and our friend group. We're creating our own traditions with people who actually see us. The wedding photos arrived last week. We look happy in every single one, surrounded by people who wanted to be there. There's not a trace of obligation or resentment in any frame. We had them professionally bound into an album. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd given in that night, if I'd canceled like they asked. I'd probably be married by now anyway, maybe with a smaller ceremony, maybe at a courthouse like they suggested. But I'd also still be the person who bent, who accommodated, who put everyone else first while my own needs evaporated. I don't regret the path I chose. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret the choice itself. My wife and I are looking at houses now, planning to move a bit further from my hometown. Fresh start, new neighborhood, space to build the life we want. The quiet one isn't quiet anymore. And the family I'm building now is the one that actually matters.